The pistol lay across the workbench, its frame dull steel instead of gleaming alloy, its grip worn smooth by hands long turned to dust. Cadets from 3 worlds leaned closer, whispering as if the relic might disintegrate under their gaze. "It's older than our fleet archives," one muttered. "Older than the Empire itself," another added. The human didn't look up. He slid open the chamber, revealing brass cartridges the cadets had only ever seen in museums. "Primitive," someone scoffed. The human smiled faintly, voice calm. "Primitive things have a way of lasting." Then he clicked the chamber shut. The pistol rested on the workbench, its frame a dull steel scarred by time. Not polished alloy, not composite ceramics, just metal forged before the Empire had drawn its first maps. Elias Vare ran a cloth over the slide, movements calm, steady. He'd done it 100 times before, though never with so many eyes on him. Cadets gathered at the edge of the bay, their voices lowered but sharp enough to cut. Koresh Dren's forked tongue flicked once, a reptilian smirk curling at the corners of his mouth. "You polish that relic like it's worth something." His scales shimmered faintly under the overhead lights, each movement deliberate, a predator amused by a curiosity. Beside him, Leora Tan tilted her crystalline head, refracting light across the walls. "That pistol is pre-contact, isn't it? Humans actually use such things?" Her tone carried more wonder than mockery, but the effect was the same. Whispers rippled through the group, laughter breaking in quick bursts. Elias didn't answer right away. He slid the chamber open, revealing brass cartridges seated with mechanical certainty. The sound, metal on metal, was alien in a room filled with the quiet hum of pulse staves and translator badges. He checked each cartridge, closed the chamber with a clean click, and only then lifted his gaze. "Primitive," Virek's Soln buzzed, mandibles twitching as his insectoid bulk loomed over the others. "One shot at a time, slow, inefficient." The human's reply was quiet, steady, almost an afterthought. "Inefficient things don't survive centuries." For a moment, the room stilled. The cadets' expressions flickered, between amusement, disbelief, and something else they didn't want to name. Koresh's smirk deepened. "You expect to pass final trials with that, when the rest of us train with weapons designed to carve through fleets?" Elias set the pistol down, resting his hands on the workbench as if ending the conversation. "Maybe I do," he said. Then just as the laughter began again, he added, "But not today." The line lingered, sharp as a blade, left half drawn. None of the cadets asked what he meant. None dared. The first alarm came as a flicker. Overhead lights stuttered once, twice, before settling back into a steady glow. Most cadets barely noticed, absorbed in drills and idle talk. Elias noticed. He always noticed. A hum shifted underfoot, the background vibration of the Academy's energy grid, wrong by a fraction of a tone. He lifted his eyes from the workbench but said nothing. The pistol remained at his side, its presence ignored by the others. Then the bay doors cycled shut, heavy latches clamping with unusual speed. Leora's crystalline features brightened faintly as she glanced upward. Strange. Door cycles are supposed to remain open during low-threat drills. Koresh laughed, sharp and dismissive. "Probably another test. The instructors love their little tricks. They'll shut the lights off next. Watch us panic." Another ripple ran through the bay. This time, the translator badges on each cadet crackled with static before returning to silence. No one spoke of it. No one but Elias, his voice calm, almost conversational. "That isn't standard procedure." Virek turned, his bulk shifting uneasily. "It's a drill. Has to be." His mandibles clicked, but his eyes betrayed the doubt already creeping in. The overhead speaker chimed, a clipped voice resonating across the hall. "Cadets, this is a simulation readiness exercise. Maintain positions until instructed." Leora frowned. "That's odd. The phrasing, it isn't the usual code." She trailed off, eyes darting toward Elias. He didn't look up. His thumb traced the pistol's grip, feeling the familiar grooves worn by hands older than the Empire. "If it's a simulation," he said softly, They've changed the rules. A beat of silence followed, just long enough for the cadets to exchange nervous glances. Just long enough for the hum under their feet to falter again, then return stronger, harsher. Koresh forced a laugh. "You're reading ghosts. Relax." Elias slid a cartridge from the pistol, checked its brass casing against the light, and seated it with a quiet snap. "Relaxation," he murmured, "is for drills." The bay doors groaned once more. This time the sound didn't stop. Elias stood, the pistol heavy at his side, though he hadn't lifted it yet. Around him, cadets shifted uneasily, pulse staves buzzing faintly in standby mode. The glow from their weapons painted the bay in sterile light. His weapon gave off no glow, just cold steel and brass. The second anomaly was harder to ignore. A faint vibration, then silence. Outside the bay, the usual cadence of footsteps along the corridor was gone. Training halls never went quiet, not with hundreds of cadets moving between drills. Leora's crystalline eyes refracted nervously. "Where are the instructors?" No one answered. Koresh tapped his claw against the wall, trying for arrogance. It came off brittle. "They're testing us. You'll see." Elias finally moved. He walked to the bay door and pressed his hand against the seam. Warm, too warm. Energy surged, his jaw tightened just slightly. "Not a drill." Virik twitched at the words. "You don't know that." But Elias didn't argue. He didn't need to. He crouched, peering along the floor where shadows should have pooled beneath the bulkhead. The light bled wrong, an overcharge in the circuits. He stood again, voice calm, almost casual. "Someone's cycling power manually. That doesn't happen during simulations." The cadets exchanged looks, whispers turning sharp, doubt creeping in. He ejected the magazine, counted brass casings one by one, slid it back in. The metallic click rang louder than it should have in the heavy air. Micro spike, a sound no one else in the room could ignore. Koresh scoffed, but his voice had lost its edge. "So what if it isn't a drill? You think that thing will save you?" He pointed at the pistol like it was a joke left too long on the table. Elias holstered it with deliberate calm. "I think it's already outlasted your certainty." The bay lights dimmed a fraction more. This time, no one laughed. The bay shuddered with a deep metallic groan. Not the controlled resonance of a training scenario. This was raw force grinding against reinforced steel. Dust sifted from the overhead supports. Leora's crystalline body caught the trembling light, her voice breaking sharp. "That isn't scripted." Koresh spun toward the door, pulse staff snapping to full charge. Could still be part of the test. His words came too quickly, too defensive. The sound beneath his claim betrayed him, a muffled boom reverberating through the hall. Another. Closer. The cadets froze as the bay doors locked again, this time with a sound like bone under strain. A split second later, the translator badges on their uniforms fuzzed into static before going dead. Silence pressed in, thick and absolute. Elias was already moving. His hand rested on the pistol, chambered round, already seated. Calm voice, steady as stone. "Positions. Away from the doors." Virik's mandibles clicked in protest. "We're armed. We should—" The bulkhead split with a shriek. A torch of white energy carved a line through the alloy, edges glowing molten red. The cadets stumbled back in shock. Through the breach, shadows advanced. Figures clad in armor too smooth, too featureless. Their weapons whispering with energy hums. Valen directive. Unknown here, but practiced. Not a test, not an accident. An incursion. Koresh's bravado broke into a hiss. "We can't fight that. Our staves won't—" Elias drew the pistol. The metallic scrape echoed louder than the invading hum. The cadets turned, disbelief flashing across every face, one primitive relic against advanced war gear. He stepped into the open, stance solid. The first intruder forced the breach wider, weapon raised. Elias didn't hesitate. The pistol thundered, a brutal crack of sound that rattled the bay, deafening in its simplicity. The kinetic slug tore into armor not designed for ballistics. The figure staggered, fell. The cadets recoiled. Not from the invader, but from the weapon in Elias's hand. Smoke curled from the barrel. The silence afterward was absolute. Elias exhaled once, steady. Simulations over. The shot still echoed in the bay, a raw thunderclap bouncing off alloy walls. Smoke drifted in a thin ribbon from the barrel, alien to a generation raised on clean energy beams. The fallen intruder twitched once, armor cracked at the seam where the slug had struck. The cadets stared at the body, at the ruin, at the pistol in Elias' steady hand. Lyora's crystalline form flickered faintly, like a prism shaken by sudden light. That shouldn't be possible, Koresh hissed, pulse staff trembling. Their armor is designed against plasma, against scatter-ion bursts. Not, he gestured helplessly, not that. Another figure pushed through the breach, visor reflecting sterile glow. Its sheer rifle hummed as it locked on the target. Elias shifted, no wasted movement, and fired again. The report cracked like thunder. The round punched through the visor's joint. The soldier collapsed without ceremony. Silence cracked under Virek's mandibles, clicking fast with panic. 2 shots, 2 kills. But you'll run dry. No weapon lasts forever. Elias ejected the magazine, brass casing tumbling to the floor with a ringing ping. He slid another round home, chambered it with a calm motion, and holstered the pistol at his side. His voice carried in the sudden hush. Weapons don't last forever. Skills do. The cadets exchanged looks, uncertainty now heavier than fear. Their training staves hummed faintly, built for restraint and exercise, not survival. The next wave of intruders breached with ruthless efficiency. 3 armored silhouettes, stepping in sequence, rifles raised. Koresh raised his staff. Lyora shifted to cover. Virek braced his bulk. Elias stepped forward. His voice was quiet, but sharp as a blade. Stay behind me. Watch where they fall. The pistol roared. Again. Each report thundered through the bay, a violent punctuation to the hum of energy fire. Brass casings clattered on alloy. Armor split where seams met kinetic force, where design had never accounted for blunt inevitability. When the echoes faded, 3 bodies lay still. Smoke curled, acrid and heavy. Elias lowered the pistol, calm expression unbroken. Lesson 1, he said, reloading with slow precision. Don't assume history forgot how to fight. They slipped from the bay into shadowed corridors. Elias at point, the pistol steady in his hand. Behind him, 3 cadets who had once mocked him now moved in uneasy silence. The usual light strips flickered low, forcing their steps into caution. Null grenades gutted the Academy's sensors, leaving only the dim glow of emergency panels. Their translator badges hung useless, dead weight on their uniforms. Lyora's crystalline edges threw faint light ahead. She whispered, voice strained. Why here? Why the Academy? Elias didn't answer. Not yet. His eyes scanned each junction, noting heat residue on walls, scuff marks where armored boots had dragged. Intruders had already moved through these halls, but their path was deliberate, not random. They reached the archives wing. Heavy doors stood half open, one hinge seared clean through. Inside, the chamber stretched tall and solemn, rows of shelves stacked with relics, physical books, tools, weapons retired long before the Empire consolidated its fleets. The air smelled of dust and iron scorch. Virek loomed close, mandibles clicking nervously. Why attack this place? The real data is stored in cores. Everything here is obsolete. Elias stepped past the threshold, gaze settling on shattered cases, scrolls, etched plates, old schematics scattered across the floor. He crouched, lifted a fragment of paper between gloved fingers. Singed but legible, an old ballistics chart. He looked up at the cadets, voice low. Obsolete things survive in ways your databases can't. Koresh frowned, hissing under his breath. You think they came for relics? For scraps? Another noise cut the conversation. A faint scuff, the rasp of armor against stone. Shapes moved deeper inside the wing. Enemy silhouettes among forgotten shelves. Not random. Searching. Elias slid the fragment back onto the floor. He checked the pistol, chambered with quiet certainty. His tone was flat, certain. They're not here for scraps. They're here for what survives beyond your memory. The cadets followed his gaze as the first armored figure turned, its visor glowing faintly in the dim. Elias lifted the pistol. The hunt continued. The intruders moved with machine precision, 3 at a time, sweeping shelves with rifles humming low. They didn't rush. They didn't need to. The cadets froze behind a toppled case, pulse staves gripped too tight, their breaths catching in the stale air. Koresh's scaled fingers trembled. "We can't meet them here. They'll cut us down in seconds." Elias watched the soldiers' formation, his gaze steady, unblinking. He spoke softly, words meant only for the cadets. Their rifles disperse energy forward, wide arcs, high yield, perfect in open ground. He tapped the stone wall with a knuckle. Worthless in a choke. Lyora's crystalline head tilted, light fracturing nervously. "A choke?" Elias pointed towards a narrow passage splitting the archives, an old service corridor no wider than 2 shoulders. Crates and shelving leaned precariously at its entrance. "There, we pull them in one at a time. Their numbers stop mattering." Virik shifted, bulk uneasy. "Our staves. Use them as distraction." Elias interrupted, voice flat. "Blindside the second target while I take the first." Koresh hissed. Whisper sharp. "You're assuming your weapon lasts. You're assuming you don't miss." Elias chambered another round, brass snapping into place. The sound made the cadets flinch. His reply came like stone dropped in water. "I don't miss." The cadets exchanged glances, disbelief and fear warring. Then Leora nodded, crystalline edges glimmering faint. "We don't have another plan." Elias moved first, sliding into shadow at the choke point. His body language was calm, deliberate, each step precise. He crouched low, pistol angled forward. He didn't raise his voice. "Positions. Wait for my signal." The intruders advanced, one stepping toward the corridor, visor gleaming faintly in the dark. Their boots struck stone in heavy rhythm. The cadets' grips tightened, every instinct screaming to flee. Elias lowered his breath until it was soundless. He felt the old steel in his hands, every groove familiar, every weight accounted for. When the first intruder stepped into the choke, Elias moved. The pistol thundered once. The corridor answered with silence. The shot cracked like a thunderclap inside the narrow corridor. The lead intruder staggered, visor shattered, body collapsing in a heap that blocked the passage. Sparks hissed where armor met stone. Elias stepped forward, swift, efficient. He kicked the body aside before it pinned the entrance, eyes already fixed on the second soldier. "Now," he said, voice flat. Virik moved first, his pulse staff flashing in a desperate arc. The blow didn't pierce armor, but it jarred the intruder sideways. Elias fired again. The slug punched through exposed plating where the helmet met the neck guard. The soldier dropped. Koresh hissed under his breath, disbelief sharp. 2 shots. Impossible. But the corridor offered no time for wonder. A third intruder forced its way in, sheer rifle sparking against the wall as it discharged wild energy bursts. The narrow walls amplified the crackling roar. Leora lifted her staff, crystalline edges refracting the blast harmlessly against the shelving. "Their arcs can't spread here." Elias didn't hesitate. He fired once, the slug ricocheting off a wall before sinking into the intruder's side seam. The soldier crumpled, weapon falling silent. Smoke clung to the air, acrid and heavy. Brass casings rolled across the stone floor, gleaming faintly in emergency light. Elias lowered the pistol, chambered the next round with deliberate calm. "Lesson 2, he said evenly. "Control the ground, and you control the fight." The cadets stared. Koresh's bravado had drained, replaced with something quieter, harder to name. Leora's crystalline surface glowed faintly, as if reflecting a revelation. Virik's mandibles clicked, not with panic, but with resolve. Then another sound bled through the archives, the heavy rhythm of more boots, reinforcements, larger numbers. Koresh swallowed, voice low. How many? Elias listened, head tilted slightly. Too many for open ground. He slid the pistol into ready position, eyes calm. Enough to learn something new. The cadets exchanged nervous looks, but none argued now. They shifted closer, ready in spite of their fear. The first ambush had proven the impossible. Now they followed because they had no choice. The hunt wasn't over. It was only beginning. The assembly hall stretched vast and hollow, banners of the Empire swaying faintly in the recycled air. Once a chamber of ceremony, now a battlefield. The cadets staggered in behind Elias, their pulse staves raised, eyes darting to shadows at every corner. The enemy was already waiting. A full squad fanned across the hall's central floor, armored in sleek plates that shimmered faintly under emergency light. At their front stood a commander, armor reinforced, visor bright, a sheer rifle resting easily in his hands. His voice carried, distorted through modulation. One human, 3 cadets. You think to hold this hall with toys? Koresh hissed under his breath, but Elias didn't flinch. He stepped forward until the pistol caught the dim light, its dull steel gleaming faintly. Not toys, tools that lasted longer than you imagine. The commander tilted his head, dismissive. Antique scrap. He gestured with his rifle, energy humming like a live storm. I'll make this quick. The first volley seared across the hall, plasma arcs tearing through banners, cracking stone pillars. The cadets dove for cover. Elias stayed upright, moving with measured precision, eyes locked on the commander's stance. Not the weapon, not the armor. The stance, weight shifted uneven, plates layered at angles. A flaw. The pistol roared, once, twice. The first slug struck the commander's shoulder seam, staggering him a half step. The second slug punched through the joint at his hip. The armor held, mostly, but the shift was enough. Now, Elias said. The cadets surged, emboldened. Leora deflected a beam with refracted crystal, blinding a soldier long enough for Koresh to drive his staff across the visor. Virik used sheer bulk, slamming into another intruder, pinning them to the wall. The commander steadied, rage bleeding through his modulated voice. You think primitive tricks will decide this? He raised his rifle for the killing shot. Elias exhaled once, calm as ever. The pistol barked a final time, slugs slamming into the narrow seam where the visor met the neckplate. The commander crumpled, weapon falling silent. The hall froze. Smoke, echoes, silence. Elias lowered the pistol. Sometimes primitive is enough. The silence in the assembly hall lingered long after the last shot. Smoke curled toward the rafters, mingling with the faint shimmer of burned banners. Cadets and intruders alike lay scattered, the floor scarred with plasma burns and brass casings. Rescue teams arrived minutes later, instructors flooding the chamber in a rush of alarms and shouted orders. Medics pulled the injured aside, security teams secured the fallen invaders. No one moved toward Elias. No one dared interrupt him. He stood near the center, pistol lowered at his side, chamber already emptied and cleared. Calm, steady, as though nothing in the hall had been out of place. Koresh broke first, voice low, almost reverent. I thought it was a relic, worthless, but I was wrong. Leora's crystalline surface glimmered faintly. It wasn't the weapon. It was you, the way you saw what we couldn't. Virik's mandibles clicked slowly, the sound no longer panic, but something like respect. Without you, we wouldn't have lasted minutes. Elias said nothing. He slid the pistol back into its worn holster, as though returning it to sleep. His hands moved with the same precision they had at the beginning, wiping steel, checking seams, honoring something older than the Empire itself. An instructor approached, words clipped. Report, Cadet Vare, what happened here? Elias looked up only briefly, voice even. An intrusion, handled. The instructor blinked, unsettled by the understatement, then turned to coordinate the chaos. The cadets remained, their gazes fixed on the human who had stood against an army with a relic they had laughed at. Elias finished cleaning the pistol, holstering it with a soft click. His voice carried just enough to reach them. Primitive things, he said quietly, have a way of lasting.